back, and we're moving into our second conversation for today. This one is definitely going to be helpful to parents and to people in the wider society who want to support children with special needs and families who have children with special needs. We have the founder of Autism Belize, Christy Almedia, joining us via Zoom. And she's going to tell us all about the work that she's been doing and why she does it. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. So it's bright and early, and we appreciate you joining in this conversation.
I'm the mom. We've been up for hours, okay? Like this is
So Christy, let's step back and talk about Autism Belize and your motivations for founding it.
Okay, motivation. I moved back home after being away from Belize for about 18 years and started talking to some parents. You know, somebody says, oh, your child is on the spectrum. I know someone, and, you know, we meet for coffee, we chat. And also just for me, I was trying to figure out what services are available, what was there. And I found it a little difficult to find out where things are, which doctors would be able to help me with what. And just listening to some of the parents, I realized that there's still sort of like a vacuum where it's not as easy to find resources, the information, what's there, what's available, what's not available, how to get things, and then just information. A lot of parents are getting a diagnosis and they're saying, okay, this is it, your child is on the spectrum, and then what? What do you do? And there's so much questions and so little information, and that's worldwide, right? Autism is really complicated, so there really needs to be, there's not that many answers for your questions. But it just seemed like a lot of parents were struggling, and I know from my own experience how lonely it can be and how hard that can be. So I thought I wanted to do something. I really wanted to help the parents and also try and just educate Belize on a whole. So when I take out my son and somebody sees him flapping or try to talk to him and he doesn't answer back because he's nonverbal, that people won't watch me and either be frightened of him or ask me like what's wrong or whatever, because they would know. Not that I don't mind questions. I feel like I prefer the people that will come up to me and ask me a question, because then I can educate them, than those that might be frightened and kind of step away because they're afraid of.
Or just stare.
Different. Right. So the main goals is to teach autism, general public, everything, promote awareness to the general public, to the police department, the airport. I remember going to the airport once and taking Mateo into the bathroom, and the girl coming to me and saying, this is a women's bathroom. I'm like, well, I know, but you don't have an individual handicap or family bathroom. And they watched me like, well, why do you need it? Because he doesn't appear to be handicapped. So, I mean, it's about getting to all the different sectors, so show acceptance, so they start learning and they can be more welcoming and understanding for it, and then provide support, help these families. You get a diagnosis and you don't know what autism is. I had no clue what autism was until the doctor told me my son was autistic. So help these families with that information, make sure it's easier for them to know where to go to get the diagnosis, which schools would be more willing to take them, what to do after that, what therapies are available, where can they go for other support, that sort of thing. And then hopefully just build a strong network of parents so that we can lean on each other and help each other out. Some of the best information and tips I've gotten in terms of how to help Mateo have been from other parents, and just provide that. So when we are at our low or stressing or having a hard time, we know that there's someone out there that has either been through it, going through it, would understand and can talk to them and just be there for them. So provide support in that way for that.
So let's answer the most important question at the start, and you said it clearly. Autism is confusing. People don't know what to expect when you say you have an autistic child, because you keep on calling it the spectrum, which means it varies in severity. How do you explain to people what autism is?
Okay, well, you're looking at 3 areas that it'll affect, right? It affects communication. That can be verbal and nonverbal, but also the cues and everything for that. Then there's the social behaviors, understanding. A child, even from a young age, starts watching around and knows instinctively that I shouldn't do this, or the mom or dad will tell them something once and they get that this is a social behavior and what's wrong and right. Our children have a hard time with those social skills. And then there's the repetitiveness of behaviors. Children who do not play appropriately with toys and have to repeat something. I like using the example from Big Bang Theory. If anybody ever watched Sheldon at Big Bang, and when he goes to knock on the door, he has to knock 3 times. Penny, Penny, and even if Penny opens the door before he knocks that 3rd time, he still has to do it. There's that compulsion. So there is that need for there's a repetitive behavior and that need to do these things. But like you said, it's a spectrum. So I like to use the color. When autism started out, they were using blue for the color. So I used that because that was the general color for autism. If you look around, there are 50 million shades of blue. You go from very, very dark to very, very light. So when you're talking about the spectrum, on the lighter side of the spectrum, you have your high functioning or Asperger's, who are children who are pretty smart, above average intelligence, might, fixate on something or whatever, have some of the same problems, but at a lesser degree. That's the higher end of the function. They're more easy to assimilate into schools. And because of that, sometimes they don't get the diagnosis until later on because it's not as obvious. Then you've got the moderate. So your regular sort of blue that you have on the bottom of your Channel 5 screen there, who they're struggling. They might be just of average intelligence, but we can work with them, whatever. And then you've got your severely autistic, which means they sort of more of the extreme end of it. So my son is severely autistic. He has problems in all 3 areas. He is nonverbal. He has very much repetitive behaviors along with sensory issues and everything. And then he has the issues with social cues and that social behavior thing. So he's on that end of the spectrum. Now, all these children, when they're diagnosed with proper therapy, help, support, can get better on that spectrum. It is a lifelong developmental disorder. So you can sort of get better, but even an adult with autism will still be struggling sometimes with social cues or another issue, although they might be able to participate in society without people. Yeah. But you can move up. On the same way, if you're not getting therapy and support and the things you need, you can also go down. So you can be diagnosed moderately severe, but if they're not getting the therapy and the service they need, if they're not getting socializing, they can actually regress and go downwards. Yeah. And so that's also why it's really important to give parents the tools they need to help these children. That's why we need more professionals in Belize. I really, really, really want to go speak to Sixth Form and UB and Galen and tell them there's a whole wide amount of careers out there that you're not even thinking about that Belize desperately needs. Yeah. Occupational therapists, speech therapists, behavioral therapists, you name it, there's a wide range of careers around the world that these things are needed. These are high demand careers. Yeah. And that's why, because we need to get these children help, because if they can, they have a stronger chance of becoming a more proactive member of society. They can go out and get jobs and go to college and everything else. But if they're not getting that support, what we're looking at is a wide range of children who will become adults. And then what? They will become a burden on society. And while I am desperately praying I would live to be 125 so that I can take care of my child until he is old, that's not necessarily going to be true. Yeah. And this is a concern, because if we don't give parents the tools they need, if we don't help these children when they're young and help them to develop, we're going to have a problem as a society. Even as I was calling around to plan these activities, I've spoken to some of the businessmen that said, I have a cousin-in-law who is 40 and he's just home. Now we know he's autistic. He didn't get past infant 2, but he's just home with us because we didn't know, 30, 35 years ago what to do. Yeah. And so now he's just sitting at home. And so we do have some of these that are like that, older children, adults who are on the spectrum. Yeah. But with the rise of incidence in autism, I just feel that this is a really important issue to help our kids, because they do have potential. They can learn. It's different. They learn differently. They are different, but it doesn't mean they're less, and it doesn't mean that they can't have a bright future.
Yes. And you did touch a little bit, but I'm curious to know a little bit more about sort of the level of resources that we do have in Belize, and what do you think, in your opinion, is the biggest area that we can improve on, like right now?
I am still learning. I have been home less than a year.
Okay.
After the healthy living segment, a mom from Dangriga was messaging me. Was telling me about her amazing kid who's really good with art and loves the water like my son. So we were sharing pictures, and she told me about a new school. So I am still learning. But from what I've found so far, there are a few pediatricians that are willing to do the diagnosis. We have Deshane, who is certified and can do it as well, but it's not countrywide. So you still have people in Corozal, Orange Walk, and Rita will have to come up, and you've got 2 or 3 doctors that can do this. So that is needed. And then once you get the diagnosis, then what? There's the Inspiration Center, which was a brilliant idea, and it's great there, but they don't have a lot of therapists that are physically there, and so there is a huge wait list. The mom I spoke to, I'm getting internet connection is unstable. I hope you don't lose me. I've spoken to a lot of parents who are on the wait list to try and get services or are able to get therapy once a week, when sometimes, depending on the severity, they'll tell you you need 10 hours of therapy or 15 hours of therapy a week. And if we only have 1 or 2 speech therapists, how is that possible countrywide? So you do need just a variety of therapists, whether it's play therapists, ABA, ABN, behavioral, occupational. That was one of them that I looked for, because my son does really well when he's getting occupational therapy because of the sensory issues. And I haven't been able to find a certified occupational therapist here. My son is also on medication because of all the comorbid disorders that come along with autism, because it's not just autism. Then you're dealing with anxiety, depression, OCD, seizures. There's a whole list of things that also come with autism. So he's on medication, and trying to find a doctor who can help manage the medication here in the country was very difficult. And actually, I was able to find one, and he was absolutely open with me. He says, I'm a neurologist, but I am not a pediatric neurologist. This isn't my specialty, but I made it my point to learn. So I'm going to help you, but I want you to know that. And so I was grateful, and he's been absolutely wonderful. But this is one doctor in the whole country that can help with medication. So it's needed everywhere. And then just again, the general education. We talk about inclusive schools, and I met with Ministry of Education. I was really excited to hear them say there is this push to become inclusive. But it's easy to say, oh, we'll be inclusive because we'll take your child. But as a parent, and I've learned through my travels, I don't want you to take my child and then just have him in a corner. Because the teacher doesn't know what to do with him, and you don't understand, and he is just there because he's there. I want a school who's going to be willing to work with him and realize that he is an individual person that will learn individually. They've never met a child like him, because if you met one child on the spectrum, you've met one, and will be willing to do IEPs and structures and be flexible with it. The school that he was in the Dominican Republic, I remember the first time I sat down with them, and they were like, you know what? We really don't know. We've never had a child on the spectrum, but we're willing to learn. And of all the schools I visited, I chose that because they said they were willing to learn. And so you need teachers and schools that aren't just going to take your child, but be willing to learn about them and work with them. So every start of a school year, I have a huge paper that I talk all about Mateo. And I'll talk about what he likes, what he doesn't like, what his sensitivities are, and I give it to the homeroom teacher on day 1 of the school.
Christy, I think that's such a critical...
He's going to be teaching you.
I think that the school situation is such a critical one, and one we can have now, because there's a whole transition that's taking place. Currently, I know, at least in Belize City, children who are autistic, when they're sometimes moderate, and especially when they're severe, can only access education in 2 places: private school or Stella Maris. Private school will require that you perhaps get an additional person to sit with your child, and be able to sit with them. I know NARCY does offer some assistance as well, but it's a very big demand. So it's such limited options, and the expense that comes with it as well. You know, it's almost like these children may be cheated of what the potential could be.
And that's the sad thing. Sometimes when you'll listen to a story. I remember meeting a parent in Cayman, and she told me about her 21-year-old son who goes to work with her husband because, you know, he didn't get to go to high school or anything because of the spectrum. And she says, you know, he can say, bring the hammer and do this and do that and give, you know, 2-step instructions, and he's following. And I was listening to this alongside of a therapist who was with me as well. And when we stopped, the meeting we ended, and I was talking to the therapist, she says, you know, listening to that child, the 21-year-old now, had so much potential. And she goes, if he had gotten behavior therapy when he was 5, you know, he had the chance. He could possibly, we don't know, have gone to high school and have done more. Mm-hmm. I spoke to a mom last week in Cayo who was talking about the same thing. Her son, from what she said to me, seems really smart, knows computers, know this, he's 14, but she's calling all around and she can't find one high school that's going to be willing to take him. And then what?
Yeah.
You know, and
even if they get through school, what happens after that? Where do they get employment? Because some of them can't work.
My scare. My son is 12. I have about 2 more years of school, and then what? None of the high schools in Belize are going to be taking Mateo.
Yeah.
And so in 2 years' time, I'm going to be right where that parent is. And so a lot of times too, when we even talk about autism, or we focus on the therapy or the this, we talk about the child.
Yep.
We don't think about the teenager and the adult. Yeah. And all of these children are going to grow into teenagers and adults.
Yeah, I mean, and that's special needs in general. You know, children who graduate from Stella Maris, for example, also need employment. I think it has been a glaring void for a very long time, and a lack of openness in the wider society to embrace people with different needs.
And I love that you brought that up, because it's not just with autism and not being able to get into high school. We're talking Down syndrome. Yeah. You know, there's a wide range of special needs parents out there that will have the same issue come graduation time after standard 6. And then what? Because high school isn't going to fix. Now, I did visit St. Peter's Anglican in Orange Walk, and they have a center. Yeah. So they're working with kids now up to 16, 17. They've tried a work program where they're taking them, you know, to work in a little store. They've taught them how to make bread and sell bread. They do a whole life skills program about making their beds and stuff. And that's the kind of program we need throughout the country. Yeah. We need the life skills, teaching them basic hygiene, dressing themselves, take house chores, and then take it to the next level. We have a huge tourism industry. My son can learn to roll knives and forks and napkins and put ketchup and stuff and help out at a restaurant or at a hotel. I mean, they're basic jobs that we can start with for some of our kids that are at the lower end of the spectrum, that with the help of a shadow could learn to work with that, or could go and work at a grocery store and help stock shelves or something. They might need help initially in the form of a shadow or a paraprofessional. Yeah. Go with them and show them how to do it. It has to be a trained program. Yeah. You can't say, oh, well, you graduate from high school, we'll put you in the grocery store to stock shelves and expect them to succeed. That's not going to happen. It's going to have to be a gradual step-by-step process. But that's why we need centers like that.
And it does take advocacy as well. And so that's where kind of getting a group together, whether you're starting online. How has it been? Because you started this maybe 2 months ago?
Yeah, and I was hoping to start with a bang, and it kind of went like a little poof because of COVID. We were supposed to have a 10K run on the paddleboarding, and there were several activities I'd been working on for months to set up that had to be postponed. But then we started with our guest speaker series, and we've done over 10 of them. And they were just live Facebook things. And I'll be honest, at first, we get 10, 15 people that sign in live. But I go back now and I look at the videos, and they've been watched, 1,700 times. We have all of these views where people are going to see. And I've gotten comments from people elsewhere, not just Belize, in the Caribbean or the US or whatever. So people have been seeing them, and I love that. And I've gotten questions from them, you know. There's like one video there about shadows and paraprofessionals that, as the speaker was talking, I was like, this isn't just good for our parents to know. I wish, like, you know, every principal in Belize and every like educators and stuff could go watch this specific presentation. So we've been really trying to gear some of the younger ones to, you know, we started basic about what is autism and diagnosing, and then we've worked up to sensory disorders and tips for dealing with this or that. And so that's kind of grown. I set up the website, which was stress for me because I've never done it before, but I had to learn. And now I'm blogging. So about twice a week, I post a new blog with my experiences with Mateo, in the hopes that by sharing, I'm educating, but I'm also hoping to get parents to feel more comfortable to come out and talk about their children. And hopefully parents will start submitting their stories that we can post on the blog as well. I'm looking forward to the day when I keep getting submissions where they can, you know, talk about their stories about how their son sings in church or does this or whatever, again, for education. But by sharing our stories, we're not only just educating, but we're also making sure we are comfortable with what we're dealing with, too, that and there's no embarrassment or worrying about a stigma or anything.
And do you find parents complaining about stigma and discrimination?
Yes. I've had some parents, when I was asking them, because they'll come to me and ask me a question after the live speak, and I wonder, why didn't you just post it on Facebook when they were on? And they're like, you know, I haven't even told my friends that I got the diagnosis. I'm worried about what my family will say. Or, you know, one caregiver was talking about, you know, that the father doesn't understand, and so she just tries to deal with it because they just think it's a discipline problem. So I've heard stories like that. The one mom was talking about how when her child stims in public, how he's bullied and the kids just laugh at him. So there is a lot of that, and that's why there is, they're afraid to come out in public and share. And I see it. I've been through it. There are times when it's just easier for me to stay home with Mateo than to take him out somewhere and have to worry about, you know, not just what he needs, but how other people will react to him. But the more we talk about it, the more we share and educate, I feel like that can be eased. That a lot of it isn't, it's not about, I think, being mean or you know, something really bad about it. I just feel that a lot of it is just ignorance. They don't understand.
Yeah.
And if we help them understand, then I think people will be more accepting, especially in Belize. I find my people can be accepting, but we need to help them learn and understand. And once they do, people are like, yeah, man, he's different. Mateo loves the water. He's out by the boat. Some of the guys that are working on the United and on these old sailboats before March 9th, all of them are like, yeah, they cannot tell you what autism is. I know when I say the word, I can see in their face they don't know. Yeah. But they are the best as Mateo. They're like, yeah, man, I know somebody who did this on the talk. He deaf? And I said, no, he's not deaf. He said, you're sure to hear you? I'm like, yeah, but then they welcome him. They're like, come, Teo, come on the boat, come do this. And they're great with him, even though they don't know the technical terms or understand. And that's how I feel Belize can be. They don't need to know all the technical things, but once they realize that these kids aren't rude or just whatever, they're different, I feel like our general public will just be accepting.
Yeah. You know, there's something that I wanted to ask that you touched on a little bit earlier, and that's sort of navigating the COVID pandemic when, you know, if you have an autistic child or whatever, because we know that this has been such a disruptive time for everybody. And, you know, you spoke a bit earlier about the importance in some children on the spectrum to have set routines. And now that, you know, there isn't that, and also for parents who may have to be, you know, providing extra care, they're at home, you know, 24/7 in some cases. So I'm wondering what that's like, what's it been like in your experience, and whether you've heard also stories from other parents as well.
I think for parents, one of the biggest worries will be regression, because once you take a child out of their routine and they're not getting, especially the social part of school, because yes, we can help them with their ABCs or their homework, but if they're not getting that whole environment, we're worried about them going backwards on the spectrum. They might lose some of those social skills and things we've been working on. as well as the educational things. But then there's also the behaviors. For myself, my son's sleep pattern has been all over the place. He'll get up at 12:30 and party all night until like midday lunch before he'll pass out for an hour or two. So every night for us has been different, whether he's up at 3 a.m., 2, whatever, sleep has been hell. Also, I think his anxiety level is up. So I'm someone that always has the news on TV. I've got CNN and MSNBC that would normally be running all the time. And for the past 2 months, there's been no TV on. And if I'm watching something, if the Prime Minister comes up or whatever, I'm either put on headphones or I will read the press release later because he understands a lot. And I can see his anxiety up. He's stimming ridiculous amounts. He flaps like this and he's always stimmed. But the extreme of it has been very scary, so much so I was worried that he was having seizures. I took him to the doctor during COVID. I was scared to go into the hospital, but I took him to the doctor during COVID because I was very worried that it might have been seizures. It was so bad. And all we can figure is that it's the anxiety. So like he's locked out now because we don't talk about COVID around him. I don't have MSNBC or the Channel 5 News or anything on if he's around. I'll watch it later. I'll put on my headphones, but it's not on because we're trying to keep that down. So that's personal for my experience about it. We've just tried to create a whole different sort of routine to help him, but he struggled, He wants to go out. He wants his car rides. He wants us, and he knows something's going on. He knows everyone's stressed out, but he doesn't quite get that. So that's harder. A lot of the parents are concerned, I think, on speaking with them has been about schooling and regression and how hard it would be once it's time to go back, how getting them back in and that transition period, that will be very difficult for it. And again, social skills. Spoke to a mom who has a 16-year-old, and we've talked several times throughout the whole COVID thing, and he's doing some behaviors at home that she hasn't seen before. She's like, I've never had problems with this, and now he's doing this, and once you take them out of their routine, you don't know, and then trying to get them back into it.
Because it's so important to them. So, Christy, of course, this is an opportunity for people to reach out and for you guys to work together. And I know you've said very early on, this is not just for parents of autistic children. How do people join this network, and what do you think the benefit will be for people who are interested?
One of my favorite quotes is, it takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a child with autism to raise the consciousness of a village. If you want to learn and help, one of the best things you can do is just to go to autismbelize.org. There's a join team Belize, Autism Belize, and you'll fill out a form just with your email and everything. It's not for spam. It's just that when there is an event or something, we can send you information, and there's a comment section. So if you want to say, I want to work with, or I would like to help. I had a associate professor from the Washington University in Seattle reach out because she saw some of this stuff with Autism Belize and reached out to me and said, I want to help. And I said, really? Because we really need help. And so we're organizing a webinar with this professor for parents at the end of June. We're going back and forth with that, planning on it. So, I mean, and you don't have to work in the field or be an educator to be a partner in this, right? You can just, one of my big goals, which I wanted to do for September for new school year, because of COVID, it's not going to happen, is I want to work with the high schools because most of them have community service hours. And I feel that there'll be a lot of high school students that can learn and benefit from working with our children. And I feel sort of like a big brother, big sister program would be excellent. We would go in, and all the high school students that want to volunteer, we'd have to do sensitization with them so they know what to expect and do's and don'ts. But then afterwards, they can do one-on-one time with it. So if someone fills out and says, I am at this high school and I love water and swimming, I'd be like, oh, this is the perfect match for Mateo. And then he come in and spend time swimming with Mateo on a Saturday morning. He gets his credit hours. He starts learning something. Mateo gets that socializing, that friend thing that he desperately needs, because making friends is hard for them. And then parents also get respite service. which would be great, because if you're with my son, maybe I can run out and pick up some groceries, or I can just sit down and have a coffee and take a shower and a break, because maybe you're that parent that doesn't get that break. So there's a lot of possibilities that with things that are already existing in our community that we can do. So I would ask anyone who is interested or would like to help, and even if you're not sure how to, but you just want to, go to autismbelize.org, and you can sign up there, and we'll follow up with you. But don't worry, it's not for spam or anything like that. You can go there. On that website, you'll also find the list of resources that's constantly being updated. The blog is there as well. You can also find us on Facebook, on Twitter and Instagram, Autism Belize. That's where we hold our guest speakers. The guest speaker things are saved on Facebook and on the website as well. If you just want to go and learn about more what autism is, if you're concerned and you want to watch the diagnosing autism, you can go and watch that as well. So those are all there. I've kind of like tried to cover as much of social media as I could learn in this period of time, because I'm getting old and I'm still struggling trying to figure out Instagram.
Well, now people know where to find you. Christy, thank you for telling us what you have been doing and why you do it. And we definitely hope that some parents get to access the resources, and people who are looking to support also join the cause as well. Thank you.
One thing, our parent support group meeting is coming up towards the end of the month at the YWCA, so you can keep checking in about that, because we will be having our physical meeting soon.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. And you have that information on your website, right?
Yes, all of it's there.
Okay. Thank you very much, Christy.
Thanks. Take care.
All right. There you had it. That was the founder of Autism Belize, Christy Almedia, and a lot of useful information there. Remember, if you want to get in touch with the group, or if you want to participate or support in any way, you can find them online at autismbelize.org. We're going to go ahead and take a break now, and when we come back, we'll be talking about music for healing. Please stay tuned.